We're back here at right on time at 2:10, and in time for a very special presentation. They are all special, and this one is special in a special way. We are going to be hearing about a set of innovative practices and effective practices that are being implemented in Miami-Dade County for gun violence prevention that I've been for a while now insisting that our speaker, Wayne Rawlins, go public to tell the world about the wonderful work he and his group are doing, because I think we need to learn from them and spread the word about how to make these type of interventions more, how to spread them around and how to implement them more effectively everywhere. Wayne Rawlins is president of Yuma Futures International. He's a strategic planning consultant who has assisted rural and urban communities nationwide in developing, implementing, and evaluating successful community revitalization strategies. Rollins is the project manager for Miami-Dade County's AntiViolence Initiative, a 4-year, $7 million strategy that includes the Group Violence Intervention Program and the nationally acclaimed Walking One Stop, which has shifted the paradigm on how services are delivered to Miami-Dade's most challenged neighborhoods by bringing a one-stop victim service center to the doorsteps of residents traumatized by gun violence. He also serves as the director of the South Florida Reentry Task Force. From 95 to 97, Rollins served as the executive director of Opportunities Industrialization Center and increased the organization's funding by 500% in 15 months, while increasing the job placement rate from 22% to over 90%. During his tenure as executive director of the Miami-Dade Wheat and Seed from 1997 to 2002, Rollins developed several nationally recognized initiatives and was honored with the Director's Community Leadership Award from the Federal Bureau of Investigations in Washington, D.C. He served as the lead executive consultant for Project Safe Neighborhoods, a law enforcement and human services coalition that included scores of federal, state, and local criminal justice agencies, and more than 150 social and economic service providers, all working together to reduce gun and gang violence in the Southern District of Florida. And more importantly, he's one of my bosses. He's a board director in the Melissa Institute for Violence Prevention and Treatment. And I leave you now with Wayne.
Thank you for that introduction, Utione. And you're one of my bosses. I continue to learn from you on a daily basis and from all of the colleagues on the Melissa Institute team. So we're going to explore today. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, the learning objectives. We're going to highlight the Miami-Dade Anti-Violence Initiative and the components of that initiative. They're based on the comprehensive gang model that has been around for some time. Actually, the comprehensive gang model was built on the weed and seed strategy. Weed and seed strategy had prevention, intervention, community policing and reentry, and then the gang model supplanted the community policing with suppression element. The model does not always work. It takes strong capacity of the collaborating partners, and it takes cohesion, collective efficacy, if you will. And I think we've successfully been able to do that in Miami-Dade County. We have seen nearly a 50% reduction in group member involved homicides in the Liberty City and Brownsville area from October 2020 to September 2021. What makes that even more striking is that this was the time that the rest of the nation was experiencing spikes in homicides. So we're very fortunate and blessed to have our partnerships with Miami-Dade County Police Department, the State Attorney's Office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and of course, all of the community-based social and economic service providers that provide support and outreach to group-involved individuals that are trying to achieve an honorable exit from their life of group/gang violence. The objectives of today's presentation are to understand what those core elements are, and I will try and share with you some anecdotal information that I have been privy to firsthand, and I'll talk more about that later, about the mindset of a shooter. And so for the researchers that are on this call, there will be opportunities for you to explore this area deeper. I know that it's sometimes hard for researchers to work in the prisons and work with prisoners, but I'll talk a little bit more about that, and maybe there's a way that we can do some amazing qualitative research around this area of the mindset of a shooter. Okay, so the core elements of the AntiViolence Initiative are prevention, intervention, suppression, and reentry, as I mentioned. So I'll kind of go one by one and give you a little bit of breakdown as to what this is all about. So by way of background, from 2010, I had served as the lead consultant for Miami-Dade County's anti-gang strategy. There was a plea from the PACT organization, which is a organization that represents 40 churches and universities and other institutions that represent tens of thousands of individuals. And every year they have what they call a Nehemiah action. And they basically told the elected officials for Miami-Dade County that we want one of these three gang reduction models, gun reduction models, employed in Miami-Dade. And the leadership agreed that they would explore these different models. Simultaneously, the elected official at the time over the Liberty City and Brownsville area, Audrey Edmondson, was also pushing for a more boots on the ground approach to this work. And so coming together with both of those mindsets, the county decided, said, okay, well, we already have the Miami-Dade County anti-gang framework. Well, let's inject the group violence intervention strategy into the model. So this is how this whole thing kind of came together, and it matured over about 12 years now. So the school-based interventions, maybe some of you may have remember 2 years ago, there was a huge billboard campaign about the curfew, teen curfew that is on the books. And so Community Youth Against Violence, which is one of the subcontractors under the UMA Futures umbrella, which houses the Anti-Violence Initiative within the Juvenile Services Department of Miami-Dade County under the leadership now of Director Kathy Burgos. And so Community Youth Against Violence, they are engaged in peer mentoring with students in the various schools, all the way from Miami Gardens to Florida City. And they have been doing some amazing work with the students via Zoom during the pandemic. I had opportunity to teach a 7-week program in positive peer leadership mentoring, which I'll talk more about that model momentarily, but they have been able to coalesce upwards to 300 students on one Zoom call, even during the spring break. So I mean, that in itself is phenomenal. that you're able to convene a group like that. And they came up with an amazing strategic plan that we helped to facilitate, because the positive peer leadership mentoring is all about giving participants the capacity to develop strategic plans and then implement those plans. And so that's exactly what they're doing with the Community Youth Against Violence. Hotspots Reading, you can probably figure out just by the name what that is. We dispatched criminal justice professionals, prosecutors, police, corrections officers to the daycare centers in the areas where there are high incidents of gun violence. You might say, well, what the heck does that have to do with reducing shootings and homicides in the area? Well, a lot of these children on their way to daycare, they have to walk past crime scenes. Some of these children, they know the caliber of a gun just by the shots fired. And we're talking about 3-year-old and 4-year-old children. So we dispatch criminal justice professionals to read to the children. We all know that reading helps to build the vocabulary and the capacity for success once that child enters into the elementary school system. So during COVID, for obvious reasons, we were not able to continue with that initiative face-to-face, but we are looking forward to resuming that in the next upcoming school year. The In-Prison Gang Prevention Summit. Our positive peer leadership team that is in the prison developed the In-Prison Gang Prevention Summit. And the whole idea was to elevate the voices of people that were not included in the strategy discussions around gun violence. And what important voices they are. We're talking about those that were the drivers of violence in our community, and they were caught, convicted, and many of them serving life sentences. But in the Positive Peer Leadership Mentoring Program, they've decided they want to change their lives around. They have seen their children now becoming gang involved, and they want to do something to change that. So again, with the influence of that individual being removed from the community, removed from the household, and their siblings or children being impacted negatively, by that incarceration, has left a big impact on those families and those young people. So our cohort in the Everglades Correctional Institution, we facilitate sessions with them every other week. And I'm going to talk more about that as we move forward. But the In-Prison Gang Prevention Summit was one of those objectives that emerged from the strategic planning that we did with the gang involved individuals at the Everglades Correctional Institution. Gang awareness presentations. This is just straight capacity building, gang 101. And we've done these in schools. We've done it for a criminal justice professional. We've done it, pretty much to anybody who is asked for it. So you just kind of understand the difference between gang graffiti and just artistic graffiti, and different gang signs, and gang 101. Basically, I don't know how else to really just describe it. So all of that is capacity building. Now, intervention, walking one stop. It has been like nothing I've seen anywhere in the country. And having served as a technical assistance provider for the U.S. Department of Justice, I've been to most major cities and many small cities, and I've never seen anything like it. In 2008, we did the South Florida Anti-Gang Summit, and we brought together 175 experts from around the country and here locally to look at some of the emerging gang problems in Miami-Dade County. And one of the objectives that emerged from that was to establish one-stop social and economic service centers in all the areas that had high incidence of gang and gun violence. Well, roll the clock back to 2008. That was the housing bust So property taxes were low. There was no chance of putting these one-stop centers, in all the areas that there was high incidence of gun violence, much less staffing them and equipping them. And also, having been the director of Weed and Seed, I know that, you have crime displacement. So you put your attention in one area today, it can be displaced to somewhere else in the county tomorrow. And so, investing so much in these centers didn't make sense. But by the grace of the Almighty, we said, well, why don't we put that one-stop center on the shoulders of elected officials, community activists, social service providers, faith leaders, community residents, and bring that one-stop center to the doorstep of those in those areas where there's been recent or persistent incidents of gaining gun violence. And it has been nothing short of amazing. Just to give you a little scenario of what it looks like is we'll meet for a briefing at the local police department that hosts, or I should say serves, that the area that we're going to host the Walk in One Stop. We'll fill door hanger bags with all the service providers, brochures, and services. We'll do a little role play, and all this takes place in about 30 minutes. We will line up outside the police station in a caravan with blue lights flashing. We will go out to the neighborhood where the Walk in One Stop is going to take place, and those that are involved with the drug trade, they go running and hiding. You don't see them for the duration of the Walk in One Stop. And the law-abiding citizens are opening the door to look at this amazing display of police and community collaboration. And we have a staging area there where Career Source and sometimes the Department of Health and the state attorney's office will be there offering assistance with seal and expungement. In Career Source, of course, with job readiness and resume writing, all that. So when we go to the doorstep of the individuals in the area, we're able to take them for on-the-spot service delivery if the service that they want is available at the staging area, right there on the spot. Career Source, they did a evaluation of the people that got on the Career Source bus from 2014 to 2017 and found that over 40% of those that got on the bus during Walk in One Stop and signed up for services actually wound up getting jobs. 40%. Now, why is this so impactful? Prior to Walk in One Stop, we have done scores of events in community centers and public housing, and I've seen the people not go across the street to access the services at the community center. But now with it coming right to the doorstep, how powerful is that? I was fortunate enough to co-author a white paper with William Bratton, the former commissioner of police in New York City. And, he was a kind of a stop and frisk guy, right? Okay, so, very just kind of hardcore policing. But in looking at Walk in One Stop and looking at some of the other work that we're doing with the AVI, he's moved more to the center, right? In how policing really ought to work. And, community engagement and transparency and police legitimacy, and reconciliation is so important, particularly in the post-George Floyd America. So seeing the police lockstep with community members and residents going door to door, saying, how can I help you? The mayor, commissioners, members of Congress have all gone out on Walk in One Stop with us. And it's just an amazing display of collective efficacy. And, it shows law enforcement in a different light. Just like when we do the hotspots reading, where the children, the only time they see police in their community, either somebody's going to jail or, there's been a shooting or a homicide. So when they see a police officer or prosecutor come in to read to them, they're no longer seeing the enforcer or the enemy. They're seeing officer friendly. And same thing here with Walk in One Stop. So it's It's an opportunity for reconciliation and police legitimacy during the walking one stop. So once we make contact with the resident, we do a contact sheet. We have the service provider that can meet the needs of the resident, follow up with the resident within 7 days so that the services are adequately delivered, and provide the results of that contact to us so that we can track the success of those referrals that were made or the lack thereof. Some of you may already be on the Unite Us platform, which allows for immediate referral coordination and referral delivery. And we are now experimenting with that Unite Us platform to be able to expedite the delivery of those services and referrals during walking one stop. Actually, in the next 30 days, we have 3 walking one stops coming up in Miami Gardens, Opelika, and Coconut Grove. I just got a call from the mayor's office a little while ago. They want to do a walking one stop in June, as well as Opelika, who has the new sheriff, who all of you know, Scott Israel. So Opelika will be doing a walking one stop in June as well. I think it's June 13th, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, there's ample opportunities for you to experience it. But as I look through the participants on this call, many of you have already participated in walking one stop and contributed tremendously to the efficacy of the effort. So positive peer leadership mentoring, I mentioned it. I want to come back to that when I start to talk about the mindset of the shooting. The suppression, GVI, there is tons of literature, peer-reviewed articles, Justice Department evaluations on GVI. It's been over 20 years providing results when implemented with fidelity. And once we brought it under our umbrella, that was the key thing. We have to operate with fidelity. And, you know, I mean, as most of you know, if you operate an effective practice or promising practice or best practice to fidelity, you are likely to get the results that you would expect. And so we have seen tremendous results with the GVI. So on GVI has all the fidelity elements, right? A group audit and a problem analysis, you know, where we first identify, you know, the group members that are driving the violence, and what is the composition of those groups? How many members? What is their age? What is their level of violence? And so we can focus our attention on that 1% of less of the people that are driving the violence. It's only a few people that are driving the violence in Miami-Dade County. Only a few, and that holds true across the country according to the GVI work. So we focus our attention on those individuals. Now, we do also do place-based intervention, like walking one stop. We know that there's certain neighborhoods where there are high incidents of gun violence, so we dispatch walking one stop there, and we do a place-based. But our focus with GVI is people-focused, really looking at those individuals that are driving the violence. So what does that look like on a week-to-week basis? Well, every Monday, I facilitate a shooting analysis with our partners, Miami-Dade Police, the victim advocates. We have a team of social workers that I'll talk to more about, our street outreach team with Circle of Brotherhood and others that discuss each incident that happens in our catchment areas. And our catchment areas are 3 now. We started with Liberty City, Brownsville, which is the North Side Police District. We expanded to South District, which is Goulds, Naranja, West Prime, unincorporated areas adjacent to Homestead and Richmond Heights and the like, and intracoastal, unincorporated areas of North Miami Beach. Although the intracoastal is relatively new on coming on board, and we're just now fully implementing down in South District. So anyway, every week we look at every incident that takes place in those catchment areas. First, the street outreach team will speak to what they found when they showed up at a shooting. So how do we know that a shooting took place? Well, 7 News, yes, but we get a shooting alert from the police department when they deem it appropriate, typically within 90 minutes of the shooting taking place. Immediately, we dispatch the street outreach team, which are credible messengers, violence interrupters. There's different labels for their role, but basically they are folks that show up on the scene, are credible messengers in the community, and they talk with bystanders, they talk with victims, they talk with family members on the scene, and now at the hospital, which I'll elaborate on momentarily. So they're getting street level information that the police don't get. So in a shooting analysis, they're sharing that information. Then the police, they share their information to the extent that they can. Of course, there are boundaries, and the street outreach workers don't share everything, because they have boundaries as well. And the police don't share everything because they have boundaries, but enough information for us to put the pieces of the puzzle together as to why most of the incidents took place. Is it group involved or is it domestic? I mean, our focus is group member involved incidents. So if it's domestic or if it's a random act of violence, we don't get involved with that. But usually if it's 2 or more members that are engaged in a violent act, we'll typically look at that as a group member involved incident. And that's really where our focus is, because we know that's where 70% of the homicides in a jurisdiction take place, in areas where there are by violent groups. So we also have the victim advocates on the call from Miami-Dade Police Department. So the victim advocates, they share different perspectives, because they're dealing with the victims and victim services and paying for the funerals and all that. So they have engagement with the resident. We have social workers that are part of our hospital-based initiative that I'll go into greater detail, but they're also on the call. The Juvenile Services Department, they're on the call. Sometimes Parks and Recreation is on the call because the incidents may have taken place in or around parks. The Nuisance Abatement Department of the police department is also on the call, because if the incident took place around a commercial establishment that has a history of incidents, well, then that may fall under the nuisance abatement codes, and they are able to leverage, impose those fines or enforcement actions against those parties. So we bring together or many of the relevant partners together, and that goes back to the whole thing of collective efficacy and why this whole thing works. Because like I mentioned earlier, that in not every place when you do the comprehensive gang model, it doesn't always work, but it works here because of that cohesion and that collaboration that we have. So after the analysis, then we do deliverables. Each one of the groups now has something to do as it relates to that incident. Street outreach may have to do some canvassing. MDPD, they may have to, do some additional investigations. Victim advocates may have to follow up, accordingly. Or whatever the situation might be, there are deliverables that the partners have to follow up on, so that we're able to further understand the pieces of the puzzle, and most importantly, to stop a retaliation or re-victimization. So the shooting analyses are very critical and they're very impactful. We do this on a weekly basis. Custom notifications. Custom notifications are person-to-person, face-to-face delivery of the GVI message that we want to see you safe, alive, and free, but just don't engage in any more violence. And we do that at the doorstep of the individual that has recently been shot. Now, our population may be a victim today and a perpetrator tomorrow or vice versa. A lot of our victims that are involved with group member involved incidents, they are targeted for a reason. And so, you know, they may be a victim, but it could also be a subject or a perpetrator in the violence. So we're delivering this message, myself, our faith-based coordinator, Johnny Barber, and Colleen McKenzie, who is with the Jackson Trauma Center. We go and we deliver this message from the community moral voice, which we call. Now, the police go in first and secure the scene. I mean, we've gone to do custom notifications, and the subject is there with the AK-47 on their lap. I mean, we're going to tough places and tough people, extremely high risk folks. So the police go in, they secure the scene, and then we're able to make our approach. Moreover, the police have what they call the U program, Youth Opportunity Youth Outreach Unit, where they engage the children and the siblings of those that have been victimized by the violence. And so it's amazing, you know, that a group involved person may have a child or a sibling, but yet they join the police U program, where they go on field trips, they get homework assistance, they get mentoring. And so it's amazing. So the U, they go in, they do their piece on the custom notification after the police secure the scene. Then victim advocates will go in when appropriate and you know, make sure that the victim is aware of what the victim services that they may be eligible for. And then we come in with the GVI help and message that we want to see you safe, alive, and free. Don't engage in any more violence. But it's not just, you know, just say no. We're coming in with support and services. We did 15 relocations. I'm sorry, 17 relocations last year. So, you know, a person, they may have a bullseye on their forehead, and we'll buy them a plane ticket. We'll buy them a bus ticket. We will, you know, move them to the next county. We'll, you know, whatever will get that family or that individual out of harm's way, we will do it to the best of our ability. We don't have deep pockets, you know, but with what we have, we do the most that we can. And of course, we try and optimize the existing services and resources that are available in the community anyway. But that has been an important part of it. And we will help what we call the big, small, the big, small stuff. You know, maybe their family needs food. Maybe they need help paying the light bill, but it wins them over. It wins them over and gives us an opportunity to have prolonged engagement with that family, because the key is for them not to retaliate, for them not to be re-victimized. So this is the game changer. The hospital-based violence intervention program, they're popping up all over the country. There are many of them now. And we spoke to many of them when we were in the development stages of our own hospital-based violence intervention program, which we launched in December of 2021. So we're only 5 months in. And we have hired 4 MSWs, a PhD, 2 licensed clinical social workers, and a social worker that's who's an MSW and data coordinator at the hospital, at Rider Trauma Center. So when a person comes in, immediately our data coordinator that's housed there is on it. Once the client and or family, depending on the situation, gives authorization, our social workers are now assigned to that family and individual. Of course, with the HIPAA, we have to get consent. So we have our social work, and we're talking about, you know, professionals, and they're all women of color, and one gentleman, all women of color, a man of color, so they relate to our population, because, you know, let's face it, the majority of, you know, our clients, you know, they're people of color, unfortunately, and so the social workers are culturally competent, culturally sensitive. One of our social workers, one of our MSWs, she was in a house that got shut up at one point with her 1-year-old child. She experienced that. So the empathy is there, the experience is there. And, we have a partnering program that many of you may be aware of, Thriving Mind, which is formerly the South Florida Behavioral Health Network. And I see that Megan Hobson and maybe some others from that team are on this call right now. They also engaged utilizing the Victims of Crime Act funding to support victims, not only shooting victims and not only in our catchment areas, but throughout Miami-Dade County with a trauma recovery network. So, we engage with them and we collaborate when necessary, with them as well. But when we see our clients that have been shot by AK-47 or AR-15 and huge gashes of flesh have been removed from their limbs, and then they're being sent home and not really knowing how to adequately care for those wounds, it really, not only did it break our heart, but it also helped to emerge an unmet need. And that is that continuum of care for our clients after they are released. Not just psychological, because we got that with the social workers and the referrals to Thriving Mind agencies, but the physical part of it. Now, you say, well, why would you need a healthcare professional or a nurse to be on your team? Well, let me tell you, some of our clients, they're not talking to the police. They're not talking to the victim advocates because they're attached to the police. They are not, sometimes not even talking to us, but they're going to talk to that nurse that's going to help them, not get infected and losing one of their limbs. And so we are working now on developing the scope of services and getting all that approved. And we will be adding a health professional to our team as well. So another tool to access the families and our victims back in the community and provide that continuum of care. Today, we have one client. He was paralyzed, quad. He can't use his hands or his legs. And he was a shooting victim, and his family said, we can't take care of him. We don't have the ability to take care of him. And so this is the kind of situation that we are working with our clients, because now also whoever shot him, and it was intentional, whoever shot him, now you're dealing with a person that's basically a sitting duck. He cannot do for himself. He cannot even wipe the defecate from his rear end, much less anything else. And so, this is the kind of cases that we're dealing with, all the way from, the one that just gets grazed, I say just gets grazed because, once we start getting involved with the severity of our incidents, a graze is not a big deal compared to, someone that's now paralyzed or have lost their life. So having that healthcare professional is going to be an amazing addition to what is already a world-class hospital-based violence intervention program. So let me go on to the street outreach workers. The street outreach workers, again, are the credible messengers. Circle of Brotherhood is subcontracted to provide that service, and they do amazing work in mediating, or I should say mitigating conflicts in the street, and also getting in with the family where nobody else really can. Some of them have, past criminal backgrounds. Some of them, were part of the drivers of the violence. And now they are on the side of good and wanting to help reduce the violence, and they do an amazing job. Case management is performed by our social workers, which I previously mentioned. And capacity building is a huge part of our work. You cannot do this work and you don't have the capacity to do it. If you don't not trained in trauma-informed care, how are you going to be able to do this work? So none other than the Melissa Institute, provides much of our training for our social workers and for our street outreach team, so that we have the capacity to do this work, to take care of self-care and understand the HIPAA regulations, and just a litany of important skill sets that the Melissa Institute provides to our team. So I'm gracious to Itioni and Elise and the rest of the team at Melissa for supporting this work. And I'm sure that there are many of you that are on this call that have expertise that could really benefit this work as well. So we invite you to help us so we can help others. The custom notification I mentioned is delivering that message of, we want to see you safe, alive, and free, but don't shoot. Well, that same message is delivered at a call-in. The call-in is a face-to-face meeting with representatives of drivers of violence, the groups that drive the violence. And we have a representative from the mayor's office, the director of the police department, one of the chiefs at the U.S. Attorney's Office, a chief from the state attorney's office, myself, and we're all given the same message, that the violence has to stop. Megan Hobson, who's also on this call right now, she a victim of gun violence, and she's like a little sister or a big sister to many of our drivers of violence. And I mean that in terms of, she's young, she's been an innocent victim of a shooting, and so she can relate, and they can relate to her. So when she speaks, it resonates right to their heart. So she's also been a part of that team that delivers that message, at the call-in. And they're told quite frankly, the first group to commit a homicide, they're going to get all of our attention, federal, state, local. We put a map up of the federal prison system, and say that you could be sent out to Wyoming somewhere, far from Miami, where your family will have a hard time, seeing you, and where the federal system, where if you are charged with a day, if you're convicted with a day, you're going to do a day. If you're convicted for life, you're going to do life, and you'll live in a box. So that federal message is very, very, very powerful. And sometimes we bring the feds out to us with us. So we did at one occasion on a custom notification. So when the feds come out with the big acronyms on the back of their windbreakers, ATF, FBI, DA, it is very, very, very impactful, in the community. And so these are some of the partnerships that manifest themselves into what we have experienced of a almost 50% reduction in group member involved homicides in our catchment area. So the call-in is not something we do often. We've done 2 of them, and COVID kind of slowed us down a little bit on that because it is a face-to-face meeting. But the custom notifications we do every Tuesday, alternating between South Miami-Dade and North Miami-Dade. Reentry. Reentry, we work with the South Florida prisons, Florida Department of Corrections, of all of the individuals that are within 6 months of their release, and we bring service providers into the prison. We preface that with a needs survey. So we have a one-pager that addresses the needs of that person that's coming back into the community. Do they need ID? Do they need housing? Do they need education? Do they need health care? Whatever it is, behavioral health needs. And so we identify those needs, and then we bring those providers inside the prison for a face-to-face reentry fair. So those individuals that are coming back into Miami-Dade County have an opportunity to sign up for services and at a minimum get the brochures and business cards of those that can help support a successful reentry before they're released. And guess what? We deliver the GVI message to them too. We want to see you safe, alive, and free when you come out. Don't engage in any violence. So we ask you to take advantage of the services that we have brought inside the prison. And this is something we've done since 2004. We were the first that we're aware of in the nation to do our reentry fairs. And we've been doing them, like I said, since 2004. And we have one coming up on the 18th of this month at the South Florida Reception Center. So it's something that also those that are on this call, if you were interested, you just feel free to any of this that I'm sharing with you. You want to become engaged in any of these activities. My email is wayne@waynerawlins.com. And I'm the easiest person in the world to find, and we'll be happy to work with you and your organization or you as an individual. So I know that there's some questions, but I want to talk about the mindset of the shooter. And before I bring up the next slide to talk about that, I want to flip back to the positive peer leadership mentoring. When we first started positive peer leadership mentoring at the Indian River Correctional Institution, which housed past tense because they're no longer open, they closed it to downsizing. But when we first started, all the children that were direct filed and convicted in the state of Florida were put into one place. All the direct file children, and direct file, for those who may not know, are children that were deemed as adults because of the severity of their alleged crime, according to the Florida state statutes, and were convicted as adults. And so they were under the age of 18, but they had to serve their time at Indian River. So you can just imagine what it was like at the Bloody River, which was the nickname that it had. And so we went up there for a discussion with the wardens. And I asked the question, do you ever have any gang issues? He said, that's all we deal with all day is gang issues. The North against the South, the Latin Kings against La Familia, and, the Zoes against everybody else, Bloods against, just all day long. And so we had already done positive peer leadership in the past. And we said, well, why don't we try positive peer leadership at Indian River? And from that time that we started until the time that they closed, they did not have one serious violent incident after we started positive peer leadership mentoring. The Department of State did a documentary in part on this work that aired in Panama and through Central and South America. And if you go to, I believe I have it on my website, you can view it. It's in Spanish, but you can view it. If you're not a Spanish speaker, and if you're a Spanish speaker, that's added benefit. So with that said, they closed Everglades, and now we went to they closed Indian River. Now we went to Everglades Correctional Institution, where they will experience the same thing, but with older adults. And I tell you, the first session that we facilitated of positive peer leadership mentoring, I thought it was like, I don't even know. It was some of the toughest, the hardest, the guys that you can possibly imagine that were in the prison. All, serious gang members, tatted from head to toe, the number of people they murdered, identified by teardrops, and just crazy. And so we took them through strategic planning. We helped them to identify 3 objectives. The 3 objectives was, 1, they wanted to do an in-prison gang prevention summit, which we did. They wanted to write a 20-chapter book, which we did. They wanted to do an enhanced hygiene program for indigent inmates that couldn't afford to buy soap after the soap runs out, or toothpaste after the toothpaste runs out. And so we did that with the help of our community partners, and JSD was tremendous in providing that, but also others. So now we still operate positive peer leadership mentoring. So in preparation for this talk, I spoke to Etione, and he said, well, why don't we look at the mindset of a shooter? I said, okay, great. I mean, so it wasn't very much empirical evidence, and then a whole lot of peer articles that I found, although Don probably could find them. We just said, okay, well, let me go to the experts. So I took it to the men at Positive Peer Leadership Mentoring, and the ones that were shooters, they had this to say. And this was just a month and a half ago, March 25th of this year. When I was on the street, in my mind, I was somebody because I had control over you by pointing a gun. I felt powerful for the first time. We commit crimes for power, control, and excitement. In my mind, I felt like I was God with a gun. I had the power to take a life, and it was an adrenaline rush. Once the commitment to the streets is made, and this is straight quote, so I mean, if the grammar is not right, don't blame me. Consequences of that lifestyle come with it. It could be learned from being bullied and picked on at a young age until the point of being fed up is reached to stop being preyed upon and by any means necessary. Grief, drugs, and loss of support could create an unstable mindset. Several of them said that they had lost a loved one and was wondering, like, why me? And it manifested itself in them becoming a perpetrator. I didn't care about myself, so why would I care about shooting someone else? Peer pressure to show them that I will do it. And then this the last, and there's more. If anybody's interested in getting all of the comments, I'd be happy to share it with you. But they said this is one that kind of summed it all up. My mindset at the time, I had first picked up a gun. I was scared at first until I had pulled that trigger. And right after that, I had felt the power from that gun. It made me feel as if I was the baddest person on this planet Earth. It then had me feeling as if I can do what I want to do and nothing can stop me at that moment. That feeling was the power of Satan, who was in control of my thoughts, mind, and heart. That mindset had caused me to be put in prison on death row. That evil power caused me to use that gun and injure people who I didn't know. The power of the gun is nothing but Satan at work. Please don't let Satan continue to control you any longer. What can be said about the mindset of a shooter? And that's why elevating the voices of the men that are incarcerated and women that are incarcerated are so key and critical to this work, because those are the ones that we're trying to help. It's kind of like me and Etione trying to plan a baby shower. It's like, okay, well, let's order, some pizza and some Coke. Yeah, and we're not the population. So how do we not do all this work, all this strategic planning, all this effort, and we don't engage the population that has the answer, has a lot of the answers. So that's it. We'll open it up for any questions or comments, feedback. Etione?
Well, Wayne, I speechless. I want to thank you. This is powerful, important. The second part of your talk, of the title, was "Be part of the solution." I inserted that part there, in part because I knew that this is like a huge secret. The work that you and others like you are doing, and even socially minded, responsible, committed individuals like the mental health professionals, educators, and others that are present here today, we have no idea that this is going on, and even more sadly, less of a sense of what we can do to support and strengthen initiatives like this. Because I think, having seen you in action and others in your group, it only takes 5 minutes of being around you to know, hey, I can do that. I can help them with other part. I might not be doing the interruption work there in the neighborhoods, but there are things that we can do. And that is, in fact, what brought the Melissa Institute to interactions with you. our public defender, Carlos Martinez, called me up and said, forget what you're doing right now, go and call Wayne Rawlins. You know, you figure it out what you need to do with them, and they need you. So I think I make this as a call to everybody in the audience too, because as Colleen Chiqueri, just scientific board member of the Institute, wrote on a comment, it is about the power of those relationships and those partnerships that are working with you and behind you, that are really giving you, that are making you effective. And I think we can do so much more if all of our resources are put together for this common purpose. And Colleen, I wanted to give you the mic if you wanted to say a few things.
No, I just, you know, I'm in Chicago, so we have a lot of people trying to do a lot of the same stuff. And, you know, it's not working right now very well. And I think it's because the relationships have been harmed in so many ways in our community right now. So it's just, it warms my heart to hear your passion and to know that maybe in you know, there's lessons learned as you watch each city try to do this and try to figure out how it works in your own community. But clearly you've got a lot of critical parts. And so just my heart goes out to you, and I hope it keeps going. And yeah, the idea that all of your young people that are waived into adult court are being put together in one place, that's something. So there's just so much logic, right? But thank you for doing the work you're doing, and hopefully people can unite around you, because the wraparound services, we have some cool initiatives going on with children of incarcerated parents too in Chicago. There's a really fantastic woman, Nika Tapia Jones, who's been working really hard on those issues in Chicago. So that might be your next phase, and maybe an entry point for some of you. What we know is there's lots of kids in all of your schools that you have no idea have been impacted by this. The percentages are really significant. So that might be an invite in. So maybe for next year's conference, Tioni.
Thank you so much, Colin.
So I wonder, I know, Wayne, that you told me initiatives like this are being implemented in how many cities around the U.S.?
I'm sorry, what?
You have mentioned to me that there is like a coalition or a partnership of cities that are kind of like trying to implement similar initiatives, correct?
Yeah, in different aspects of it. I think we're the only one that I've seen that has all of it under one umbrella. But there are many cities that have the hospital-based initiative. They have the GVI, but not necessarily under one umbrella. So I think we're somewhat unique to that. I know Chicago probably has everything that I talked about, maybe except for maybe walking one stop. And they probably have a different type of outreach initiative like that. But I think what makes ours unique is that it's all under one umbrella.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any, how about Don? So you unmuted there.
Yeah, it's, I would only compliment Wayne for a fantastic presentation and effort. I will note that on the Melissa Institute, apropos his comment about reading, the Melissa Institute has 500 free movies of how to teach young children to read. Because we had proposed that if you can get children to read by grade 3, they rarely, if ever, get in trouble with the law. So I invite the attendees to visit the Melissa Institute. The second kind of comment I make, apropos of Lena's presentation about SNAP, is that in the aftermath of the George Floyd program, with Lena's help, we developed a free slideshow on how to engage policemen in bystander intervention. And one of our presenters, Irv Staub, has created a bystander program for police. If you remember, apropos of the George Floyd incident, there were 3 policemen standing by. So I invite people to visit and go through the slideshow that's on the Melissa Institute. It's also potentially applicable in terms of instances of working with anger control in the area of domestic violence. intimate partner violence. So once again, please visit the Melissa Institute website to see the multiple resources that we have developed. For example, in the aftermath of the Marjorie Taylor shooting in Parkland, Florida, we developed a school safety plan that went out to 40,000 educators, both in the United States and in Canada. So in the aftermath of each of these incidents, the Melissa Institute has mobilized. And apropos of the bystander intervention, this was recently included in the Chief of Police magazine. So kudos to all those who have been innovative in creating these kinds of programs.
So perhaps Wayne will recruit you to get something in writing in here to send around for the rest of the nation to know about and to learn about. And because I think they should know more about the work that you're doing here and the nuances of it. And it's just phenomenal. Thank you, Don, also for reminding us of those resources. And now, Deborah, I think, did you have something to say before? You're not on my screen anymore, but I thought I saw you removing the mic.
No, only that this is incredibly courageous work, and being able to meet the youth who are in such distress and such trouble at the moment of that is remarkable, and I think teaches all of us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, with that comment, we come to an end of this piece of our conference. Thank you, Wayne, again, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you and about the work that you're doing in the years to come too.